Greetings builders! The Affliction League review yesterday was just something else. They went away and beyond all of my expectations. Those new Wildwood Ascendance and Transfigured gems are definitely giving the game the good shake it needed. And the return of Ultimatum, one of the most loved mechanics of all time, is sealing the deal, making Affliction a real recipe for success. Also yesterday, the new patch notes were available but not yet the passive tree, and for that reason I'll bring you expectations of starter builds for the Affliction League, and as soon as they reveal the full passive tree, I will release 12 definitive starter builds for you to start Affliction with the right foot. And of course, I won't mention the new Wildwood Ascendance or Transfigured gems just yet, because I don't have the knowledge to do so, but as soon as the league is running and I have access to everything, those mechanics will of course be contemplated on my build guides. Now let's start this video with a great starter build that was one of the top meta starters from last league. I'm talking about the Hexblast Mines Saboteur with the Shadow class. Hexblast is a very interesting skill that deals a lot of extra damage if the enemy it hits is already cursed. Besides that, it also creates a big pulse of damage that destroys all nearby monsters. That's why it's important that our enemies are always cursed. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how powerful it gets with low investment. With cheap and easy to find items, we're going to make bosses disappear with your mind chain reactions. Part of that is because Hexblast can naturally shock, freeze and ignite enemies, and if that wasn't good enough, it also considers the lowest resistance the enemy has before calculating the damage. This build is also very fast and deals a lot of area damage. It's super satisfying to clear maps this way. Above all, you can throw your mines from a long distance and stay far from danger. Now to list the cons, I'll start saying that mine gameplay isn't for everyone. Some players just can't get used to the detonation mechanic, but trust me, it's worth giving a try because mine builds have huge potential. Another issue is that this character is not very tanky. Because of that, you need to always mind your position or you might die. As for budget, this build is cheap. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 70 chaos. To comfortable advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Profane Proxy Ring that causes one of your Skidder bots to have a curse aura. This way, the enemies you hit with your Hexblast are always going to trigger the big area damage, increasing a lot your clear speed. For clear speed, I'll give this build 9 out of 10. You are very fast and your mines explode in a big area, killing many monsters at once. It's very comfortable to clear maps with this character. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. You can stack many mines and delete bosses with a huge detonation. This build has an incredible single target potential, even on a low budget. For the survivability, I'll give it 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and can throw your mines from a big distance, this build is still not very tanky and needs to stay still from time to time to deploy the mines. That's why I took 2 points out. Next, we have another incredibly popular starter build and I'm sure a lot of players are going to start with this one. It is of course the Lightning Arrow Deadeye with the Ranger class. Even though Vengeance Cascade was nerfed, the introduction of the returning projectile support gem kept this build super fast and strong, which caused most of players to choose it. During last league, I released the Lightning Arrow guide that needed some expensive unique items, and this time I'm going to make it different. On this guide, you'll find 2 versions of this build, a budget and a complete one. Each one has its own POB and passive tree, so you can start this build even on a low budget and upgrade it later. To list the pros of this build, I'm not sure if I would start with its clear speed or boss damage, because both are amazing. This build is also not complicated to put together, I totally recommend you to try it out. Now to list the cons, I would say that this build is not very tanky. Even though you have some defensive layers, it's important to take advantage of your ranged attacks and stay far from danger. If you don't mind your position, you might die. About the budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortable advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. But if you go for the complete version, you need to invest at least 4 more divines. On the budget version, you only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering Amulet that causes all of your elemental damage to shock. This way, our enemies take a lot more damage. On the complete version, on the other hand, besides the Yoke of Suffering, you also need the Lionized Fall and the Thread of Hope unique jewels. They are expensive but grant a huge boost to your damage. For clear speed, I'll give it 10 out of 10. You fire many projectiles with high attack speed and those projectiles return to you, pierce enemies, bounce off walls and go everywhere. No one can survive that. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. Using 2 Val lightning arrows plus your ballistas on bosses will kill them so fast that you won't believe it. For the survivability, I'll give this build 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and can kill enemies from a good distance, this build isn't very tanky. If you don't mind your position, you might die. Now, just as I have predicted on my last video, the Heat Shiver helmet got heavily nerfed and the amazing Frostblade starter build is not as strong as it used to be. But don't worry, this other one can get almost as strong without the need of overpowered items, the Lightning Strike Trickster with the Shadow class. Lightning Strike is an awesome skill that used to be on top of the meta, but went down after a couple of nerfs. Now with the new returning projectile support gem, it's back with more power than ever. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. Besides a strong melee hit, Lightning Strike also creates many lightning projectiles that run on the floor, killing every enemy on its path. Besides that, this build also counts with the Trickster Ascendance to be super fast and tanky. It has 7 frames charges for extra damage and speed and a lot of defensive layers. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that this build needs a good elemental claw to work properly, but don't worry, it's easy to buy one from other players. As for budget, this build is not expensive at all. You can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfort with advanced yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering amulet that causes all of our elemental damage to be able to shock, causing enemies to take a lot more damage. For clear speed, I'll give this one 10 out of 10. As mentioned before, you have 7 frames charges and a huge effective elusive that grants this build a lot of movement speed. Besides that, Lightning Strike creates many projectiles that run on the floor, exploding many enemies that aren't even close to you yet. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. With the new returning projectile support gem, you deal a lot more damage to bosses. This one is an awesome boss killer. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build has over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even a trickster buff that causes you to take 40% less damage. Above all, you are immune to freeze and stuns. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you're just as excited as I am for Affliction. Please don't forget to tell me your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day and don't forget to keep building!